It started with a dinner invitation. Not a romantic dinner, not a celebration, just a cryptic little message from my wife, Claire. Can we talk tonight? Let's meet at Sappori's at 7. It's important. That's it. No heart emojis. No, I love you. Not even a bring wine. Just 5 carefully chosen words that told me something was off. Sappori's was her pick. Italian, fancy, and always too loud for an honest conversation. But she insisted on it. So I dressed decent, left work early, and braved Los Angeles traffic, thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the conversation we'd needed for months. We'd been distant. I'll admit that. I chalked it up to work stress and fatigue, not realizing the distance wasn't a temporary detour, it was a relocation. A spiritual U-Haul had already pulled into her heart and started unloading someone else's furniture. When I got there, the host gave me that pity smile people reserve for folks who don't know the wolves are waiting inside. I walked to the back corner booth and froze. Claire was already seated, legs crossed, sipping wine like a queen who knew her reign was secure. And seated next to her him. He looked like an over-photoshopped fitness model. Shirt too tight, teeth too white, and the kind of smug grin that said, I've already won. His name was Evan, and I'd never seen him before in my life. Claire motioned to the empty seat across from them. This is Evan, she said. You've heard me mention him. From the office. Ah, from the office. Of course. That magical, ambiguous place where people are just friends right up until someone's texting them, can't wait to see you naked on a Tuesday. I sat down, smiled. My hands were clenched under the table like they were holding back a storm. Evan leaned in, as if this was a job interview. Let me make this simple, he said. You've got 2 options. Leave quietly, or face me like a man. I almost laughed. Face him like a man? Buddy, I faced mortgage rates, medical bills, and 30 years of family drama. You're just a mid-tier plot twist. What happened next was messy. Let's just say the wine wasn't the only thing that spilled. But that's not the betrayal. No, that was just the reveal. The betrayal had already happened, far away from the clink of wine glasses and the stares of strangers. And I hadn't even scratched the surface of how far the knife had gone. And I didn't go home that night because home didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like a crime scene where the police tape had been removed, but the blood still soaked the floorboards. I checked into a cheap hotel. Vinyl carpet, flickering light outside the window, and a minibar with 2 bottles of bad whiskey I didn't touch. I sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling like I'd just been cast as the background extra in a life I used to headline. When I did finally go back, the place smelled wrong. Not visibly. The furniture was where it always was. The framed picture of us at Lake Tahoe still hung on the wall like a sick joke. But the air had a scent. Something floral and sharp, like a perfume that had no business being there. And under that? Cologne. Not mine. I didn't need a detective badge to know what had happened. I just needed to open my eyes. I started in the closet. Found a pair of red heels I didn't recognize, designer, high-end, and way too high for the woman who hadn't worn anything but sneakers around me in 6 months. Next, her vanity. Tablet unlocked. Big mistake. First thing I saw? A photo of her in a mirror at some hotel room. Wearing lingerie I'd never seen. Posing for someone who wasn't me. Swipe. There he was. Evan. Shirtless, brushing his teeth, oblivious in the background like some bad sitcom character that wandered into a serious drama. Swipe. Messages. Dozens. Voice notes, pictures, videos. Him calling her his little secret. Her giggling like she was 16 and skipping algebra to sneak into someone's back seat. One line froze me. He still thinks we're just in a rough patch. Per baby. I wasn't angry yet. Not the kind of anger that explodes. This was quieter. It was the kind of fury that simmers low, builds slowly, and reshapes you cell by cell. That night, she came home and acted like she didn't just nuke our entire marriage over crab cakes and smug smirks. Hair up, phone in hand, casual as always. I slid the tablet across the table to her. No words. She stared. Then, finally, looked up and asked, "Why were you snooping?" That was her first reaction. Not guilt. Not apology. Not even surprise. I stared back. You lied. For months. You humiliated me. You made me look like a fool, no. You made me a fool. She didn't even blink. You were boring, Logan. You stopped trying. I needed someone who made me feel something. Oh, so that's what we were now. A TED Talk about emotional thrill-seeking. You chose Evan? I said, biting down on my own tongue to keep from laughing. The guy who looks like he eats boiled chicken and flexes in the mirror for fun? She smirked. At least he listens. I nodded. Then I went into our bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started packing. She followed. You're really just going to leave? I didn't stop zipping the bag. You already left, I said. You just didn't have the decency to say it out loud. As I passed her in the hallway, she hit me with the final bullet. You were never man enough for me. I didn't yell, didn't cry, didn't flinch. I walked out of the house I bought, built, and bled for, with a bag on my shoulder and a future I hadn't yet planned. But that future? It was coming. And she wasn't going to like where it ended up. I spent the first 2 nights sleeping on a friend's couch, wrapped in the stench of microwaved noodles and unspoken questions. He didn't ask much, just handed me a beer and a blanket and said, when you're ready. On the 3rd morning, I woke up different. Not healed. Just focused. The grief had turned to grit. The pain? Recycled into purpose. I needed closure. I needed answers. But most of all, I needed the last piece of the puzzle. Because Evan, charming gym rat that he was, hadn't done this betrayal solo. Homewreckers like him? They're usually operating with their own trail of wreckage. So I found her. Her name was Natalie. Turns out, Evan had a wife. They'd been together for 7 years. No kids, just a dog named Pepper and a condo with a his and hers toothbrush setup that probably still smelled like lavender and lies. I found her on Facebook. Public profile, tagged in a few posts with Evan from last month. Laughing at a wine bar. Kissing on a rooftop. You know, classic, please don't look too close, couple content. I debated reaching out. What was I going to say? Hi, my wife's been cheating on me with your husband. Want to grab coffee and cry together? But the curiosity won. I sent a message. Natalie, I don't know how to say this gently. I think your husband Evan has been seeing my wife, Claire. I can prove it. She replied 10 minutes later. Coffee. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Say less. She walked into the cafe wearing a gray coat and the kind of face that's seen betrayal before but never wanted to wear it. She sat across from me, eyes sharp but tired. Show me, she said. I pulled out the folder. The same one I used to throw on my desk for quarterly reviews. Now filled with screenshots, timestamped photos, GPS logs from a shared family app Claire forgot I still had access to. I even had a video Claire laughing in a hotel hallway. Evan's voice whispering, hurry up before someone sees. Natalie watched every frame. No tears. No theatrics. Just a slow, steady tightening of her jaw. When the video ended, she sat back and exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a year. I knew, she said finally. I didn't want to know, but I knew. I just didn't know who, or how far it had gone. I nodded. It went all the way. We sat in silence, 2 people orbiting the same black hole. Then she did something I didn't expect. She smiled, but not a happy smile. This was the smile of someone who just realized the prison door is open and the guard's asleep. You know what the worst part is, she said, eyes scanning the window like she was watching a movie of her own life. I stayed loyal while he was out shopping for new flavors. I defended him. I blamed myself. I knew that feeling. I knew it too well. We sat there for 2 hours, drinking bitter coffee and swapping stories like war veterans who fought on different fronts but under the same flag of betrayal. When we stood up to leave, she said, I don't want revenge. I tilted my head. I want freedom, she clarified. Real, intentional, joyful freedom. Let them rot in their own mess. And that's when it clicked. Revenge didn't have to be fire and fury. Sometimes, the coldest revenge is to live better. Together. As we stepped out into the street, I said, half joking, so what now? We run off into the sunset together. She looked at me, shrugged, and said, why not? And the weirdest thing? I didn't laugh. Not because I believed it right away. But because, for the first time in weeks, the idea didn't sound crazy. Natalie and I didn't fall into each other like a rebound cliché. We didn't run off to Vegas, or toast to our new freedom with champagne over a rooftop skyline. That's not how it worked. What we did instead was meet again. For coffee. For walks. For conversations that felt like someone had finally turned the volume down on the screaming in our heads. It started off simple. 2 people comparing scars. She told me how Evan started pulling away last year, more late nights, secretive phone calls, the way he suddenly got into fitness and began wearing cologne like he was starring in his own personal commercial. Sound familiar? Yeah. Our spouses had read from the same script. One night, about 2 weeks after that first cafe meeting, she texted me, Wine and Truth? My place. You bring the bottle. I'll bring the honesty. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I knew once we crossed that threshold, emotional, not physical, there was no going back. And I was tired of going back. So I showed up. Pinot Noir in hand. Guard lowered. Her place was warm, clean. No sign of Evan. He had moved out days earlier, after she confronted him with the same evidence I'd given her. She didn't yell, didn't throw things, just slid the folder across the table and said, "I deserve better." And he left. Just like that. Funny, isn't it? How fast a house stops being a home when the mask slips. We sat on the couch. 2 glasses. 1 bottle. No pretenses. So she said, curling one leg under her. Now what? I exhaled. Now we live. Better. Louder. Freer. She smiled. Not together, though. Not yet. I wasn't suggesting. No, I know. But maybe, someday. I nodded. Someday. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. But that night was more intimate than any night I'd spent with Claire in the past 2 years. Because I was seen. Not as a fool. Not as a fallback plan. But as a man. With weight. With history. With value. The next few months were strange. Claire tried reaching out. Of course she did. At first it was condescending. Hope you're doing okay. I still care about you, Logan. Then it was confused. Why aren't you answering? Don't be like this. Eventually, it turned desperate. I made a mistake. Please, can we talk? Each message got colder in return. Until there were no returns at all. Meanwhile, Evan? He texted Natalie once. Just once. Said he missed her cooking. She screenshotted the message and sent it to me with a caption that read, "Man's out here thinking I'm DoorDash." We laughed for 10 minutes straight. Then, one Saturday morning, everything changed again. Natalie called. No preamble. You busy? I was mid-repair on a leaky kitchen faucet in the rental I was living in. Not really. Why? Come with me. 2. You'll see. 20 minutes later, I was in her passenger seat, watching her grip the wheel like it owed her money. She didn't speak until we pulled into a gravel driveway in front of a little cottage-style fixer-upper. Paint chipping. Gutters hanging. Windows cracked, but full of light. What is this? I asked. She turned to me. Ours. I blinked. Come again. I bought it. Well, I'm buying it. Got it cheap. Needs work. But I thought, we both know how to rebuild. We've had practice. Why not do it for real? Together. You want to move in together? No. I want to build something with someone who doesn't lie, doesn't hide, doesn't cheat. And I don't know what that will be yet, but I know who I want to start it with. I stared at the house. It was a mess, but it was our mess. Or at least, it could be. Let's do it, I said. We spent the next few months elbow deep in plaster and paint, ripping out rotted cabinets, hammering down new flooring, arguing over backsplash tiles like it was life or death. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. Somewhere between retiling the bathroom and replanting the garden, I realized something strange had happened. I wasn't healing from the betrayal anymore. I was healing through it. One day, I found Claire standing at the end of the driveway. Her hair pulled back, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, but not the guilt stamped all over her posture. I heard you two bought this place, she said. I didn't answer. I didn't come here to fight. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. Noted, I said. Goodbye, Claire. She nodded, turned, and walked back to her car. I never saw her again. And that was fine. Because by then, Natalie and I weren't just survivors of betrayal. We were builders. And we weren't building for revenge. Not anymore. We were building something better. Something ours. By summer, the house was finally starting to feel like a home. The front door didn't stick anymore. The kitchen faucet actually ran cold when you asked it to. And the garden, once just a dirt rectangle with the charm of a crime scene, now had wildflowers stretching toward the sun like they were trying to forget where they came from. Natalie painted the walls herself. Chose a deep green for the hallway that made the light bounce different. Said it felt like peace. I built the porch swing out back. She teased me for measuring everything 3 times, but I caught her sitting in it for hours, reading, legs curled under her like a kid who never had a treehouse. We weren't a couple. Not officially. Not yet. But we were something. Something that didn't need a label. Still, for all the growth and all the warmth, there was one thing we hadn't talked about. Revenge. Not the emotional kind, the silent treatment, the look at me now Instagram post, the unsubtle Facebook status updates. No, we'd passed that stage. We didn't want attention. We wanted closure. And closure, for me, came in the form of a hard drive. See, I'd never stopped collecting. Even after I walked out on Claire, I kept the receipts, phone records, bank statements, private messages she'd forgotten to delete from our shared cloud account. Evan was sloppy, too. His work emails weren't just inappropriate, they were criminally dumb. Flirting with interns, mocking clients, logging expenses that made no business sense unless client dinner now meant a 4-hour hotel stay in Champagne. I wasn't just betrayed. I was armed. And one rainy Tuesday afternoon, while Natalie and I were sorting old paint cans in the garage, I said, "Would you ruin someone if you had the chance?" She didn't even blink. "Depends who, and how cleanly." "I don't want drama," I said. "I want precision. I want silence. I want them to wake up one day and realize they lost. That we didn't just move on, we won." She nodded. "Show me what you've got." So I did. We spent that night cross-legged on the living room floor, her laptop open, mine beside it. Screenshots spread out like a blueprint for something darker. I had no idea Natalie had a background in marketing and communications. Turns out, she'd also worked in public relations, crisis management, ironically enough. "You know what's funny?" she said, sipping wine. "People like Evan and Claire, they build their little castles on secrets. And all it takes is one well-placed breeze to knock it down." She pulled up a few of his company's press releases. The man had a brand, a newsletter, a podcast. He gave TEDx talks on leadership integrity. I raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding." She grinned. "Oh, I'm not." Claire, meanwhile, had quietly taken a new position at a nonprofit she'd once mocked for being too vanilla. Trying to rehab her image, probably. Good girl Claire. Charitable Claire. I didn't destroy a marriage, Claire. "Let's take the high road," I said. She looked at me sideways. "Since when do you believe in that?" I smiled. "The high road gives a better view. Easier to aim." The plan took a month. We didn't go full scorched earth. That wasn't our style. This wasn't revenge out of spite. It was a controlled demolition. No fire. No mess. Just collapse. We started with Evan. A thick manila envelope arrived at his company's HR office. Inside, everything. Screenshots, emails, expense reports with timestamps that overlapped his office presentations. Testimonies from 2 ex-interns who were more than willing to go on record after a little encouragement. Natalie didn't send it as herself. She used a dummy email, registered to an address that didn't exist anymore by the time they opened the file. 3 days later, Evan was suspended. A week after that, he was gone. Turns out, companies that preach values get very squeamish when their golden boy turns out to be morally bankrupt and chronically careless. As for Claire, that took a lighter touch. We didn't want to destroy her. We wanted her exposed. Natalie knew someone at a local magazine, one of those lifestyle outlets that dabbled in fluff stories and soft scandal. She fed them a tip about Claire's conveniently timed nonprofit job, complete with anonymous sources hinting that the organization was sheltering someone with a history of inappropriate office behavior. Nothing criminal, nothing slanderous, just enough smoke to make people look twice. Claire's organization went into damage control mode. They didn't fire her. They just moved her. Sideways. Quietly. Suddenly, her fancy corner office became a shared desk in the outreach department. She went from power lunches to cafeteria salads. Poetic, really. Meanwhile, Natalie and I, we kept living. The revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't messy, but it was felt. Because now, every time Evan Googles himself, that headline pops up, "Rising star executive resigns amid allegations." And every time Claire opens LinkedIn, she sees the colleagues who used to admire her now clicking like on someone else's promotions. We didn't dance on their graves. We built a garden next to them. And we made sure the sun hit our side first. After Evan and Claire were professionally and socially scorched, I expected silence. But narcissists don't go down that easy. Evan posted a passive-aggressive podcast episode about forgiveness in business. And Claire? She started crafting a victim narrative on social media. A soft rebranding. #healing after hurt. Cute. But Natalie and I weren't playing reaction games. We were building lives. Her house was now our house. Weekends were for painting walls, not wounds. But we knew better than to relax completely. Because snakes don't just slither away. They coil. So we got ready. We cleaned up every paper trail. Secured passwords. Warned mutual friends. The goal wasn't fear. It was finality. And yet, One night, I got an email from a burner account. Subject, you think you've won. Attached, photos of me and Natalie. One of us at a hardware store. Another at her porch. Someone had been watching us. I called her. She didn't panic. She got strategic. Let them see, she said. They thought they broke us. All they've done is give us an audience. Natalie and I knew we had one final card to play. Revenge wasn't complete until it closed the door. Locked it. Burned the blueprint. So we planned a party. Not a celebration. A funeral. For our former lives. We called it a fresh start gathering. Sent invites to mutuals. Didn't block Claire. Made sure Evan's circle heard about it. Social media did the rest. Claire showed up. Of course she did. In a white dress, like she was getting married to her delusion. Evan didn't come. Word was, he'd skipped town after losing his investor deals. The night was beautiful. String lights. A jazz trio. Laughter. And Claire? She tried to smile her way through the crowd until she saw Maria, Evan's ex, the woman he dumped for Claire, talking to Natalie by the fire pit. That's when the dominoes really fell. Maria had gotten her revenge too. After Evan left her for Claire, she audited his contract involvement. Found illegal filings. Froze the accounts. Took back the company. Evan lost his house. His cars. And then, his silence. He tried blackmailing Claire with video messages she'd sent. She panicked. Sent a cease and desist. But the damage was done. At our party, Claire saw the faces of every person she had used, manipulated, discarded, and realized she was the ghost now. Unwanted. Unwelcome. She left early. Natalie and I toasted in her wake. To healing, she said. To closure, I answered. To burying the past alive, she smiled. Revenge had a body count, but not in blood and relevance. Evan's reputation never recovered. His podcast died. Sponsors pulled out. His fitness brand rebranded without him. He now manages a gym in Nevada under a different name. Claire faded too. The nonprofit demoted her again. She tried real estate, got caught forging a signature on a lease. That lawsuit was still pending last we heard. Me? I wrote again. Not revenge pieces. Just stories. About men who survive betrayal and don't just stand back up, but build skyscrapers on the ruins. Natalie started a blog about healing through construction. People loved it. She got sponsors. Partnerships. One company paid her to travel and review tools. I was her photographer. We made something real out of what was fake. And the world noticed. A year later, Claire sent one last message. I just hope you're happy now. I stared at the screen for 5 minutes. Then replied. I've never been happier. Thanks for the push. I blocked her after that. Closure doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it's just a door clicking shut. Years from the betrayal, Natalie and I stood at the ribbon cutting for our foundation, Rebuild, a nonprofit offering hands-on trades training and mental health support for people rebuilding after toxic relationships. Local news covered it. National news picked it up when they heard the backstory. The full circle arc of two betrayed spouses finding each other, not to wallow, but to rise. We didn't just live better. We thrived. And Claire and Evan? Somewhere out there, probably still blaming everyone but themselves. But this isn't their story anymore. It's ours. And our revenge? It wasn't rage. It was peace. It was purpose. It was freedom.